This is one of the most infuriating cases in Australian history. What seemed like an ordinary class reunion was actually a meticulously planned farewell ceremony. And all those in the know just stood by indifferently, witnessing the fall of a young life. In the end, after enduring 36 hours of torment, he unfortunately passed away. Perhaps, until his last moment, he didn't know that all of this was orchestrated by the person he loved the most. This tragedy has sparked widespread attention and controversy in Australia because the perpetrator was released from prison after only 4 years. He even became a celebrity, living a carefree and comfortable life. So what exactly happened back then? Let's take everyone back to 1997 to revisit this cruel tragedy that stirred public outrage. When mentioning Australia, the first places that might come to mind are Sydney or Melbourne, which are very famous. But in fact, Canberra is the capital. Canberra is the largest inland city in Australia and is a very low-key city. It has a beautiful environment and is known as a garden city. It boasts a high quality of life and an extremely low crime rate. And the story we are going to talk about today happened here.
Here, can I get her from an ambulance, please?
I have a person potentially overdose on heroin. Potentially overdose on October 26, 1997, at 12:10 p.m, the Canberra Emergency Centre received a call from a woman named Singh. She said her boyfriend Joe had lost consciousness due to an overdose of illegal substances and urgently needed rescue. 8 minutes later, the ambulance arrived at 79 Andil Street. Led by Anu, the paramedics entered the bedroom and immediately saw Joe lying on the bed. He was naked from the waist down, his skin had a strange reddish-brown hue, and his lips were a pale blue. His mouth was full of blood and vomit, his stomach was swollen, and he had stopped breathing. After several minutes of resuscitation efforts, the paramedics declared the resuscitation unsuccessful. Joe passed away, and Anu, who was beside him, completely broke down, shouting in disbelief, "No! I don't believe this is real. You have to bring him back." She even climbed onto her boyfriend, continuously kissing and hitting him, crying, "You can't leave. Don't leave me alone." The girl's frantic state lasted for a long time. It wasn't until 12:31 p.m. when the police arrived at the scene that she slightly calmed down. The independent forensic report showed that Joe had a large amount of sleeping pills and illegal substances in his system, with a free morphine concentration of 0.67 milligrams per liter, which is above the possible lethal dose. Such a high concentration of drugs can cause severe vomiting and other physiological reactions. Additionally, before ingesting the prohibited substance, Chow also took 2 to 3 sleeping pills. The combination of the 2 drugs greatly increased the probability of a fatal overdose. The police noticed needle marks on Chow's arm left by a syringe, making him look like an addict. But a normal person wouldn't typically take sleeping pills and prohibited substances at the same time. Therefore, some officers suspect that his death might have been a deliberate murder. Since Anu was the only person present at the scene, the police initially intended to get some clues from her. However, the girl was clearly traumatized, frequently shouting and screaming, and her speech was very incoherent, making communication impossible. The police had no choice but to start investigating their relationship to see if there was anything suspicious. During the investigation, some of Anu's bizarre experiences were gradually uncovered. Anu was born on September 3, 1972, in Punjab, India. Her parents were Indian-Australian doctors. In 1973, the whole family immigrated to Sydney. Anu was a very special girl, extremely lacking in a sense of security from a young age, very attached to her family, needing to sleep with her parents, and she had a rebellious and disobedient personality. From the age of 13, she started dating different boys, often skipping classes to go on dates, and even became addicted to contraband. However, despite being such a troubled girl, her academic performance was excellent. Even if she missed classes for 10 days or half a month, she could still rank among the top in exams. She was like those characters in films who could sleep through classes every day and still come out on top in exams. During high school, she not only ranked first in her grade, but also graduated with a TEL score as high as 94.1, and was admitted to the Australian National University to pursue a double degree in economics and law. This series of high-level achievements made her family very proud. Her father often remarked that, although Anu often got into trouble when she was young, there was no question about her studies. She was incredibly upright in that regard. In 1991, 19-year-old Anu moved to Canberra by herself and rented a house near the National University. However, after living alone, her attachment to her parents grew stronger, and she would call home 5 or 6 times a day. Every time she returned to school after a weekend break, it was like going to the gallows, causing a commotion every time. In the second semester of her freshman year, Anu had a minor car accident at school. Although she wasn't injured, due to psychological factors and other reasons, she decided to take a year off. A year later, she returned to university and fell in love with a classmate named Simon. Simon was handsome and charming, with a great sense of humor, and he made her very happy. The two quickly entered a passionate relationship and started living together. Later they had a child, but since they were still in school, they decided not to keep it. In 1994, Anu successfully obtained her bachelor's degree in economics. Although her academic journey was smooth sailing, in terms of love, however, he encountered obstacles. During his university years, he gradually became addicted to contraband, his temper was unpredictable, and he often quarreled with Simon, causing their relationship to cool down. They were just one step away from breaking up. During the school holidays, Anu and his friends came to a club in Newcastle, where they met Joe and started a new relationship. Joe is a cheerful and sunny young man, born on June 11, 1971. His parents are Italian immigrants, and he has a younger brother who is 4 years his junior. The family settled in Newcastle and lived harmoniously. He is a sports enthusiast, having participated in various competitions such as football, tennis, and basketball during his student years. He always performed outstandingly, and with his handsome looks and good physique, he attracted many admirers. In November 1994, 24-year-old Joe graduated from university and began traveling around. He recently returned to Newcastle and found a job at a civil engineering company, living quite a pleasant life. His family thought he could continue living so freely, but what happened? Anu appeared. Joe was completely smitten the moment he saw her and began to pursue her fervently. As for Anu, although she hadn't broken up with Simon yet, she was open to new encounters. Before long, the two of them were together. Her official boyfriend, Simon, who hadn't broken up with her yet, quickly noticed something was off. Anu often chatted and made phone calls secretly and occasionally giggled at her phone. After a few days of covert observation, he confirmed that he had been cheated on. He was furious and had a big argument with Anu, angrily calling her a lunatic, an idiot, and a shameless bitch, then stormed off. The two of them broke up after that. Logically, Simon, who was cheated on, should have been the most heartbroken, but surprisingly, Anu, the culprit, was even more upset than he was. Not only did her academic performance decline, but she would also burst into tears at the slightest provocation, stay up all night, and wander around the house. Her mother was startled when she went to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Upon inquiry, it was revealed that Anu was very sensitive about being called an idiot. She felt deeply insulted and couldn't swallow her pride. The family thought Anu was just temporarily upset and would recover soon, but in reality, he never bounced back. He was always gloomy, and his mental state kept deteriorating. During this time, Joe stayed by his side, never leaving him. The two of them were in a long-distance relationship, with one in Newcastle and the other in Canberra, but their relationship was very strong. All of this was due to Joe's unilateral efforts. In today's terms, he was a pure love warrior, charging forward for love. Besides making over a dozen calls to Anu every workday, he would drive to Canberra every Friday to spend the weekend with his girlfriend, then return at 4 in the morning on Monday to make it to work by 9:30. You have to know that there's nearly a 5-hour drive between Newcastle and Canberra, and making this round trip every week would be exhausting even for an Ironman. But this guy, he can stick with it and even enjoys it. What's even more outrageous is that if Anu suddenly feels unwell one day, he would immediately fly over to take care of her, providing meticulous care. Anu almost occupies all of Joe's time. Even during meals he spends an hour on the phone with his girlfriend. Joe's condition makes his family very worried. His parents feel like their son's soul has been captivated, ignoring everything else, solely focused on being in love. Eventually he simply quit his job and moved directly to Canberra, even opening a joint bank account where he deposited a significant amount of wedding funds. It's rare to see a perfect boyfriend who can go to such lengths for his lover. Everyone was envious, thinking Anu had found a treasure and would continue to be happy. But in fact, his mental state was deteriorating. At the end of 1996, Anu began to complain about soreness in his legs, feeling unwell all over, feeling as if he had several heads, each talking and saying that there were bugs crawling on his skin, wanting to eat his flesh. Moreover, despite weighing only 80 pounds and being as thin as a skeleton, he still felt that he was fat. He went on a diet to lose weight, drinking only cola every day, spending 4 to 5 hours at the gym, swearing that he would rather starve to death than not lose weight, and even wanted to undergo liposuction surgery. Not only that, he often claimed to be ill, sometimes saying he had chronic fatigue syndrome, other times saying he was infected with AIDS, or had permanent nerve damage. In any case, it was something different every day, and he just wouldn't believe that he was healthy. His parents contacted many psychologists, but none of it helped. He was convinced that he was seriously ill and even started making arrangements for his affairs. For example, he sold his nice clothes, gave his CDs to friends, and wrote farewell letters to his parents, among other things. In June 1997, Anu had thoughts of ending her life. She and her close friend Rao were researching books about suicide in the library. She even tried to borrow a gun from a law student, but was unsuccessful. Anu's family was very worried when they heard about these things, fearing that one day she might do something drastic. However, as you already know, the actual situation was that it wasn't Anu who ended up in trouble, but Joe. After Joe's incident, the police found his diary in the bedroom. From the contents, it was clear that he was a positive and optimistic person. He had recently bought a new car and wrote in his diary about being ready to move forward courageously. Joe never used illegal substances and was even very opposed to them, so the presence of illegal substances in his body was very suspicious, and it was highly likely that they were forcibly injected by someone else. Since Anu was the only person present at the time, the police naturally suspected him. However, the paramedics stated that before they arrived, Anu had been administering heart-saving injections to Joe. Perform artificial respiration and try to save the patient. During the rescue process, also helping with CPR. This doesn't look like someone trying to harm others. Without more clues, the case temporarily reached a deadlock. Just when the police were at a loss, a detail casually mentioned by the paramedic became an important breakthrough. It turned out that when Anu called for help, he didn't immediately provide the correct address and real name, but delayed for several minutes before telling the truth. Why did he try to conceal the address and name? Was he too nervous, not thinking clearly, or was there another hidden reason? Afterwards, the police visited his relatives, friends, and classmates and checked his mobile phone, and indeed made a significant discovery. According to the statements from his classmates, there were many suspicious points about Anu. In mid-September, early October, and on the morning of October 26th, the day Chow passed away, Anu repeatedly purchased contraband from a person named Mr. T. When Mr. T asked him why he was buying, he replied, "I don't want to live anymore, and there's another person who will leave with me." Around 9:30 a.m. on October 26th, when Anu was dealing with Mr. T, a classmate was also present and heard Anu say, "I did something I shouldn't have done." Anu once asked his classmates about how to inject contraband and what would happen if he overdosed. Before Chow was murdered, Anu and her close friend Rao held two parties, the first on October 20th and the second on October 24th. Many classmates were invited to the parties, and Anu told them it was a farewell ceremony, as she and her boyfriend were about to leave forever. She once bought sedatives from her classmate Carmack and inquired about the dosage. She mentioned to her counselor that Chow was a violent person and often committed domestic violence, but after investigation, the police found this was not true. She told her classmates, "I've studied psychiatry, making others believe I'm crazy isn't difficult." In addition to this series of suspicious actions, Anu's phone call records were also very strange. Between October 24th and October 26th, he astonishingly made nearly 100 phone calls, mainly to his close friend Rao, classmates Lane and Carmack, and a person named Lucy, whose full name was not disclosed. The police quickly contacted them to inquire about the specific situation. Rao was unwilling to disclose more details, but the others revealed the truth. The matter actually starts with the second dinner party on October 24th. That day, Anu invited many friends and classmates to his home. Before this, he had told many people that he wanted to leave this world completely and take Joe with him. So, except for Joe, everyone knew this was a farewell ceremony. But for some unknown reason, everyone chose to stand by indifferently, and no one stepped forward to stop or warn Joe. The dinner party ended around 3 in the morning, and the classmates gradually left, leaving only Anu. Kiao and Rao. Around 5 or 6 in the morning, Rao returned home and confided in Lucy, who was staying at his house, about Anu's evil plan. Anu didn't want to live anymore and wanted to take Chow with him, so he gave him sleeping pills and injected him with illegal substances. When Lucy heard this, she was completely shocked. How could someone do such a thing? She called Anu to question him, asking why he would do such a thing. "You have no right to take Chow's life. I'm going to call the police." But Anu insisted that he could never harm his boyfriend. "You're overthinking it." This put Lucy in an awkward position because she wasn't very familiar with Anu, and everything she knew was just Rao's one-sided account. What if this was just a joke between classmates? So she contacted Anu's classmate, Ryan, hoping he could persuade Anu not to act impulsively. Ryan said, "Oh, I've known about this for a while, don't worry, nothing will go wrong." Lucy didn't understand why Ryan was so certain, so she called Anu again, but this time Anu was clearly out of patience and warned her not to meddle. He said if she dared to call the police or tell Chow, she would be finished. Lucy was very angry after hearing this, but upon thinking it over, she wondered if she was just looking for trouble for no reason, so she simply decided not to get involved anymore. Unfortunately, the only clear-headed and willing to help kind person did not persist any longer. As for why Ryan was so certain nothing would happen, there was actually a reason for that. In May 1997, Anu told Ryan that he had AIDS and deliberately smeared blood on Joe's toothbrush so that Joe would also get infected. But later tests showed that he didn't have AIDS at all. It was something he imagined. Ryan might have heard such jokes too often, so he wasn't as sensitive to Anu's deadly remarks. However, after the dinner on October 24th, he seriously asked Anu if he really wanted to kill Joe. Anu replied that he had only put 3 sleeping pills in Joe's drink. At 10:19 p.m. on October 25th, Ryan even spoke with Joe on the phone. At that time, Joe had slept the whole day and had just woken up. He told Ryan, "Bro, I'm perfectly fine. I just slept a bit longer. Don't worry." Since Joe himself said so, Ryan felt there was no need to worry anymore. Later, based on the forensic report, it was speculated that in the early hours of October 24th, after Joe fell unconscious, Anu injected him with a prohibited substance, but it was not lethal. So, in the early hours of the 26th, he injected Joe again, then went out to buy prohibited substances from Mr. Tai. After returning, he found that Joe was in a bad state, which suddenly pricked his conscience, prompting him to call the emergency center. But out of fear of being caught, he gave a false address and name. Gumila played the role of an accomplice in this incident. He always knew about Anu's plan, but instead of stopping him, he provided $250 Australian for Anu to buy drugs. So, he didn't want to reveal any clues before, because he was afraid of being held accountable. In fact, the dinner party organized by Anu on October 20th, a few days earlier, had the same purpose, but at that time after the bridge was injected with a banned substance and didn't die, he organized another case. And by investigating up to this point, it was basically confirmed that Anu was the murderer. Later, the police found some misdiagnosed alcohol swabs, an arterial injection guide, drug injectors, and a diary at his home. The diary recorded his evil plan. That lasted for 4 months. Speaking of the case, I know you must have a question in your mind. If I don't want to live, that's one thing, but why drag the bridge along with me? There must be a reason. It turns out that Anu had been using the syrup promoted by the bridge to induce vomiting and expel stones. Later, he felt that his illness was caused by the syrup, so he harbored resentment against Chow. He even said things like wanting to kill Chow, his ex-boyfriend Simon, and all the doctors. In fact, Anu's mental issues, like headaches and depression, were after effects of using illegal substances, but he irrationally blamed everything on the syrup promoted by Chow Wu. However, this alone wasn't enough to truly incite his murderous intent. The real trigger was in June, when Anu started having suicidal thoughts. Together with his close friend Rao, Anu read some books on this topic in the library. In one of the books, he came across a story that said, if one spouse leaves first, the other will soon remarry and be with someone else. He couldn't accept such betrayal, so he wanted his boyfriend to leave with him. To achieve this goal, he borrowed a gun, bought illegal substances, and studied various pharmacological knowledge. During this process, he was also in great pain, because he didn't understand why the people around him, knowing that he was learning these things because he didn't want to live, were still willing to help. He wrote in his diary, "Today, I went to a friend's house to learn about injections. I spent the whole day planning my death. My friends clearly know I want to leave, so why are they still helping me? There is also this passage, a person who loves me very much and would become a perfect husband and father was ruined by me like this. I know I am very foolish and selfish. And his parents will be in great pain because I took their son away." We don't know what kind of conflicted mental state Anu was in when he wrote this diary. He clearly knew it was wrong, yet he chose to continue. This contradiction ran throughout the entire case. For instance, he was heartbroken over Joe's death, while calmly planning to kill. But after actually committing the act, he then tried to save him. This strange state might need to be further explored by mental health experts. After all the evidence and witness testimonies were gathered, the case quickly moved to the trial phase. Initially, the main perpetrator Anu and the accomplice Rao. They were supposed to be tried together. However, as the case details became clearer, the judge decided to separate their trials. Let's talk about Rao first. He was initially charged with murder, manslaughter, attempted murder, and other charges. But shockingly, all these charges were dismissed. The judge stated that Rao merely provided $250 Australian to Anu and was not actually involved in the murder. Ultimately, Rao was released on bail on November 5th with a bail amount of $100,000 Australian. This verdict left many people dissatisfied. And Joe's parents found it particularly incomprehensible. They expressed that an accomplice who knew all the details of the crime but did not stop it, and instead provided assistance, ended up getting away with just a cost of 100,000 Australian dollars. This is absurd. But unfortunately, the court has already made its judgment, and the result cannot be changed. They can only swallow their anger for now. Next is Anu's trial. On October 28, 1997, Anu appeared in court for the first time, sitting in the audience with the families of Anu and Joe. Anu's father never believed that a woman could commit murder. In media interviews, he emphasized that his daughter was an innocent, kind, and somewhat timid little girl, incapable of committing a crime. However, Joe's mother said that Anu was a seductress who bewitched her son, maliciously controlled his life, and ultimately killed him.
It's truly unforgivable, and I hope the judge imposes the harshest punishment. As for Anu herself, she refuses to plead guilty, he said.
I just hoped he would fall asleep so that I could end my own life without being interrupted or stopped by him. But I didn't expect that he would die because of it.
The defense team understands that with such overwhelming evidence, it's basically impossible to be acquitted. Therefore, their goal is to reduce the charge from first-degree murder to manslaughter. The defense team pointed out that Anu did not intend to harm Joe, as he immediately performed CPR and sought help from the emergency center after realizing something was wrong. Joe's death was caused by his lack of judgment in handling the situation. It was not premeditated murder, and therefore it falls under manslaughter. In response to the defense's argument, the prosecution presented a conversation record, which was the content of a call between Anu and his classmate Carmack a few minutes before he called the emergency center. The conversation clearly indicated that Anu initially did not want to seek help from the emergency responders, and only made the call after being repeatedly urged by his classmate Carmack. Additionally, the prosecution presented Anu's diary, which contained many entries suggesting he intended to harm Joe. Moreover, after a meticulous plan spanning 4 months, this all indicates that it was an organized and premeditated crime. In response, the defense argued that Anu suffered from severe borderline personality disorder, severe depression, and bulimia, and was mentally unstable at the time of the crime, unable to make calm judgments about his actions, and should not be held legally responsible. June 24, 1999. Courtroom. Based on Anu's mental state and previous actions such as saving Joe's life, you changed the charge from murder to manslaughter, and sentenced him to 10 years in prison, with no parole for at least 4 years. At the moment they heard this result, Joe's parents broke down. They screamed in protest in the courtroom, and even fainted several times. The mother said that during the trial, she presented a piece of evidence to the judge, a line in Joe's diary that read, "Leave immediately on Monday the 27th, which indicated she was planning to leave. Moreover, his clothes and suitcase also disappeared. It's very likely that Anu learned Joe was going to leave and then decided to kill her. However, the court did not take this evidence seriously at all. The mother felt deeply despairing about this. Every time in court when Anu walked past me, I wanted to rush up and slap him hard. I used all my strength to control myself and not rush up." Some netizens also expressed that this verdict was too absurd, and the final judgment was really a bit outrageous. Changing it to manslaughter is understandable, but the sentence is too short. He can be paroled in 4 years, but he killed someone. 4 years in prison is like not being imprisoned at all. If I were Joe's parents, I would be so angry that I could have a heart attack. Comments like these are emerging one after another. Some people even believe that Anu cleverly exploited loopholes using his legal knowledge. As he previously told his classmates, "I've studied psychiatry, and it's not hard to make others believe I'm insane." The verdict also shows that he indeed succeeded. In October 2001, 4 years after Joe's death, Anu was granted parole and released from prison. Due to his earlier pre-trial detention, he actually spent only 28 months in prison after his final sentence was announced. However, during his parole, he was sent back to prison in April 2004 for using marijuana. He was released again on August 5th. It is worth mentioning that Anu completed a master's degree in criminology from the University of Sydney while in prison. After his release, he continued to pursue a PhD at the University of Sydney Law School and published his dissertation in 2012. She gained her PhD by deeply exploring female crime in Australia and the pathways for women to escape crime. Her main research focused on the causes of female crime, such as psychological and physical abuse in the upbringing environment, socio-economic difficulties, and mental health issues. In this dissertation of over 100,000 words, he examined his own story with Joe.
There are many things people don't understand. There's a lot of things that have been overlooked. One of the biggest things was I was suffering from very, very severe mental illness at the time.
I would so like to reach out to the Cinques and speak to them.
Regarding the honors Anu received after his release, Joe's mother stated that Anu's research project was merely a way to attract media attention, a means for him to get on the newspapers and gain attention. This trash actually wants to help others. He should get a job and start giving back to society for all the money he spent. I will never forgive him. In 8 years, I learned to survive and then move on. But I will never forget my son, who was always by my side. Now, when I see friends with their children, I think that could have been my son. If he were alive, he would marry a good girl and start a family. It was Anu who took all this away. My son will live forever in my heart, while he will be tormented in hell. I will never forgive him. To me, he is a demon. I don't want to see his face. Please go away.
I call you the devil.
You are the devil, monster.
But no matter how unwilling the victims' families are, this case has already been concluded. This case has been adapted into novels and films by several writers and filmmakers, the most famous being Helen Garner's Dear Murderer, published in 2004. The book was released in the same month as Anu's release from prison, garnering widespread attention in society at the time. The book was later adapted into a film of the same name. Upon learning that Anu actually obtained a PhD, some netizens found it ironic. A criminal ended up becoming a PhD graduate from the University of Sydney Law School. Has the world gone mad? Will he participate in court trials in the future? How terrifying. He won't protect criminals, will he? For a long time, discussions about this case were intense, but as people often say, the internet has no memory. Even the most infuriating cases will eventually be gradually forgotten over time. Now Anu lives with his parents in Sydney, leading a life that everyone envies. Another woman related to this case, Rao, has now also gone into hiding and moved to the United States with her family to start a new life. Although this tragedy has long faded from public view, whenever it is brought up again, it still prompts deep reflection. Anu invited students studying law to the party. So why did they, knowing it was a crime, still enjoy it, even acting as accomplices? So, shouldn't what they learn be about teaching people to uphold justice and fairness? Psychological experts indicate that the bystander effect is a significant factor in Joe's victimization. This social psychological phenomenon reminds us that when witnessing someone in need of help, the more people there are, the lower the probability that someone will actually offer assistance. Because everyone assumes that others will take action, it ultimately results in no one doing anything. This mindset leads to indifferent observation, and indifference is often the beginning of danger. We hope this tragedy is not just a cold page in history, but a warning mirror, reminding people not to become silent bystanders when facing injustice and crisis.